going on in Chicago. We will fight violent crime, and we will win, and we'll win that one fairly quickly. Once we give the local police, the local law enforcement, the right to go in and fight it, and we back them monetarily and also otherwise, we're going to win that one. We're going to win it fairly quickly, I believe.
All right, that was President Trump earlier today vowing to support America's law enforcement. Joining us now with reaction, the author of a huge, soon-to-be bestseller, Cop Under Fire, moving beyond hashtags of race, crime, and a politics for a better America. Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke, I am very honored to have written the foreword for this book, Sheriff, because I admire you greatly. There is such a difference between what we just heard and a president that rushes to judgment on high-profile race cases, Trayvon Martin, Ferguson, Baltimore, Cambridge police, and ignored 4,000 people killed in his home city during that 8-year period.
In addition to the war on cops, which he was the maestro, he meaning former President Obama. But what we have now, Sean, as you know, is leadership has returned to the White House after an 8-year absence. And when you get leadership, you're going to hear and you're going to see the type of things that President Trump is talking about. As time goes on, I think this country is going to realize that they made the right choice in November of 2016.
You talk about you're colorblind as it relates to the criminal justice system. You did not hold back. You have a whole chapter, Black Lives Matters Less to Black Lives Matters than lies and leftist politics, and then you say a hate group's battle cry.
That's what it is. And
explain what you, because people are going to go after you over this.
Sure, and they have been, and that's the purpose of this book. It's a deeper dive into some of the things that I've talked about on your program and other areas where you only get the benefit of sound bites. This is a deeper dive into my core and what I believe in and what I stand for. And you know, I wasn't raised, Sean, to look at everything through the race of prism by my mom and dad, okay? And that's when I talk about that colorblind, that thing that Dr. Martin Luther King espoused, you know, a colorblind society.
Content and character.
And so, you know, that helped me because, as you know, your childhood experiences and how you're raised really will form, for the most part, you know, how you go on and lead your life. But it was a very ugly time in America, the Black Lives Matter movement. It was a political construct. And I said that in December of 2014. That didn't just come out in this book, but that was a soundbite type of thing. But then as people get in, and I encourage them to read the whole thing, they'll see what I meant when I said, you know, this is really not about black lives.
Sheriff,
this is about a political construct.
If you say, oh, you can't say it's a hate group, but the group is on tape chanting, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now? Pigs, cops in a blanket, fry them like bacon. That to me is hatred. That is beyond hate. That is insane violence against our law enforcement officers.
Without a doubt. And that stuff has been blanketed by the liberal mainstream media, the New York Times, the Washington Post. You remember hands up, don't shoot.
Yeah.
Okay? One of the biggest lies in the history of politics. Never happened. And then you just saw the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, MSNBC, CNN just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, thanks, and then moved on from that, right? That's the political construct that I'm talking about. So, you know, this war on cops has been devastating, more so than for anybody else. Good, law-abiding black people who live in the American ghetto. The overwhelming amount of people that live in these ghettos that Donald Trump has said, and I believe him, that he's going to bring a better quality of life, better schools, safer neighborhood. But they've paid the biggest price for this war on police.
God is not the enemy, but he's being attacked. And you talk about faith changing the culture. I learned more about you than I had known before, and we've been friends a long time. And you really think that we've lost our way.
Without a doubt. And part of it is because this push towards secularism, you know, in our society by the ultra-left. You know, they've marginalized God. God has become the enemy. They don't want any mention of it in a public square. Things like prayer, prayer in school, praying after a football game. You'll see a lawsuit, you know, by some atheist group or by the ACLU. And the further we get away from that, and some of the founding fathers talked about that, you know, how the faith and how, you know, it was based on Christian doctrines. There's no doubt about that. You know, they said that that is really what puts together the Constitution of the United States. And we're talking about things like concern for your fellow man, okay, loving one another, those sorts of things. But if you look at the Constitution, and most people will see, it's littered, and I say that affectionately, it's littered with references to the Almighty, the Creator, providence, the divine. So that sort of thing. So, and I'm guided by my faith, and again, it's a deeper dive into who I am. And I've taken some whacks about that. Just about everything in this book, I've been whacked at for believing. But I don't care. You know me, Sean. I stand on principle. I know who I am as a human being, and I'm not afraid to articulate that. And when you do that, you put a target on your back, and they're going to come at you. So this is,
as you said, war has been declared on the American police officer, but you're one of the guys that I think is changing the narrative. The book is phenomenal. I learned a lot about you in this book.
That's what scares the left, though. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for all your help.
Thanks for being the great, staunch supporter of law enforcement that you are.
And thanks for your platform.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, well, when we come back, we need your help. Our question of the day and some of the voicemails. Some of you